Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. This season, it's all about EOS. And you might ask, what the heck is EOS? Well, hey, Tom Wesner here is going to tell you all about it, his experience and journey. Tom, thanks for coming on. Let me ask you, first and foremost, is being an EOS implementer what you've always wanted to do when you grew up, when you were in high school? I'm assuming probably not.
No, definitely not. In fact, I didn't even know such a thing existed. No. And once I got turned on to EOS, I had felt that it was the way it was described, it was too hard to believe. And you know how things are, they're too hard to believe. When you hear the too hard, they're usually not real. But the EOS life as we describe it in our community is definitely real, definitely rewarding, and definitely highly recommended gig or practice, whatever you want to call it. It's exceeded my expectations.
Very cool. So, what did you intend to do with your career early on, and what was your first step into business?
Well, my first step is really one back in the day. So, dating myself was really to find a career that allowed me to innovate, create, and make money. My goal was to be a provider. And so I picked computer science back in the early days of computer science. I majored in computer science and went to work for Boeing Aerospace Company doing satellite system software, which then led to a series of basically software startups. So that allowed me to be creative in the software realm, creating software products that actually delivered value to end customers. That really, what would you say, filled my cup. And the success in a couple software startups and exits gave me the financial freedom then to move on to Fortune 500 and 100 companies to try basically my chops at executive roles in Fortune 500, 100 companies.
Wow. So, start up to Fortune 500. Typically, when I hear people with their exits, it's so people leaving big business to start their own, but you took the other
Yeah.
approach. What were some of the major key differences from successfully starting and exiting a business and joining the big league, so to speak?
Well, what were some of the differences? It was certainly I was searching for a destination at that time. So I'm going to weave this into the other psychology, right? As I was starting off in my career, I had this kind of feeling that happiness was a destination.
Hmm.
So it was getting my degree in computer science, check that box. That did not create happiness or fulfillment. So then it was doing my own software startups and exiting those successfully. That didn't find fulfillment. So then it was, well, it's got to be in bigger organizations where there's more at stake and more visibility and more recognition. And so I set my sights on basically an executive role in a Fortune 500 company, thinking that bigger was better. Bigger was better. More compensation was better. More visibility was better. In the end, now I'm full circle back in the entrepreneurial organization to keep it short. There was no destination that defined fulfillment. It's all about my discovery. If you were to ask my 60-year-old self now, it's really more about the journey than it is any destination along the way. And frankly speaking, I did my tour in the corporate world for roughly 20 years, and I didn't find fulfillment. I found bureaucracy, politics, slow moving organizations. Politics was probably the most unappealing, which led me back to the entrepreneurial world and taking all my knowledge to really apply that to help young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs that were looking to grow and scale their business, but didn't know how to operate a business at scale. To take all my knowledge and experience from the corporate world, running large businesses at scale, streamlining it down to help entrepreneurial organizations run better businesses.
Interesting. But you did spend 20 years, so there must have been some upside. What were some of the positives of working with big
Well,
business?
certainly compensation in an executive role at Fortune 500, 100 company. Certainly the opportunity to mentor and lead large organizations. I think at the largest point, I had 550 engineers. I was managing a technology group for a $2 billion division of Xerox. And they were like my family, right? Taking care of them, mentoring them, helping them grow, helping them be successful in their careers was very rewarding, very rewarding. So
Hmm.
and some of the products that we produced, the copiers, the printers, the services were award-winning products. And so there's a lot of pride out of delivering award-winning products. I don't know if it's even still around, PC Magazine. So if you could get on the cover of PC Magazine with your printer or your copier in that day, you had arrived. And so part of the status of the recognition, gratification, satisfaction was actually getting my products on the cover of PC Magazine.
So the team that you had, maybe not necessarily the bureaucracy part of it, but being able to mentor such a bright and excellent team with the product. So there was a lot of intrinsic reward from the success of doing it with people that you liked. There were some key
Absolutely.
components of EOS, right, where the goal is to
Yeah.
work on do meaningful work, be compensated fairly with people that you love, still having time left over for the freedom to explore passions. That might have been questionable, but hey, we don't need to go into the downside there. What was it about EOS, or how did you get acquainted that made you choose to start that chapter?
Well, I would say, my first experience with a system, set of tools and disciplines like EOS was pre-EOS. It was in a Fortune 500 technology company called Tektronix. This is mid 90s. I went to work there in a senior technology leadership role. And we successfully grew in 4 years from $400 million in revenue. It was an international company producing color printers, and we were aggressive. We grew from 400 million to $1 billion. 4 years. We were eating a Fortune 100 company, Xerox's lunch in the desktop printer space, and Xerox had a solution for that. They acquired Tektronix, but that's another story that I was alluding to. What was made Tektronix successful was they had some proprietary color technology that was wax ink, like color crayons you'd stick in the printer, and it was very vivid, especially for graphic artists.
Hmm.
What made Tektronix successful, 400 million to $1 billion, was it had a system in place. It had tools and disciplines in place. And it really aligned all the human energy within what at that time was a 3,500 person organization around a common vision, a common plan, people knowing their part in the plan, people operating with focus, discipline, and accountability, and delivering what they said they would deliver. And when you get that top to bottom in an organization, phenomenal things begin to happen. And that's exactly what happened there. So if you were to fast forward in my career, that was in 2000 that Xerox acquired Tektronix. Then I did my tour with Xerox before returning to the entrepreneur world. When I returned to the entrepreneur world in 2014, reading Traction just so resonated with me. And Gino did just a fabulous job of capturing the 20%, almost like he was at Tektronix, of what was in place that was key to their success. Taking that 20%, packaging it up in an entrepreneurial, digestible form in a book called Traction that describes business system tools and disciplines that I saw and experienced was key to Tektronix success. So when I read that book, it's almost like he was there. He
Hmm.
captured it. He distilled it into a book that was digestible by fast moving, small organization, entrepreneurial organizations. And it's phenomenal. So I think that was my convert to EOS. And then the realization was, well, I could be helping 20 businesses implement this system and get that kind of success versus being embedded in one. So that was kind of my transition point.
That's interesting. That very few EOS implementers that I've talked to have a similar origin story insofar as they were impressed with an organization they were entwined with and thought that traction was speaking about that organization as a reflection of, well, what good looks like. And I love the motivation to take what you've already seen to be successful in the paradigm of what good looks like and just try and, like you said, times it by 20. Like, let's have more people on the ride and see what happens if we can have 20 other of these types of organizations
Well,
flourish. I think
and
that's pretty cool.
the key for EOS is harnessing and aligning human energy, right?
Right.
So it can happen in a one person organization. It can happen in a 5, 10, 3,000, 4,000. And EOS is really targeted at, let's say, 20 to 250 person organizations because, as I said earlier, when it starts to get more corporate, it just is a little more bureaucracy, a little
Right.
harder to implement a different system. It's harder to turn the big boat in a different direction. Plus, the leadership team starts to get divided up between
Right.
silos. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It just doesn't pivot and turn as fast. So the key in the Tektronix with 3,500 people, that kind of leadership experience started from the top. It started from the CEO who knew he had to have a system in place and knew that he needed to get his human energy aligned around a common vision, common plan, working with focus, discipline, and accountability. And I'm not exactly sure at the time. It was Jerry Perkel was the CEO. I'm not sure if he had, I must believe he had experience at some other organization like GE or something like that, where they had a system in place that, you know, he used his lessons learned from prior business and applied that to the business we were in. Anyway, probably rambling on a little bit.
No, no, you're good. I'm just I'm following along the story. It's fascinating. So you've been doing EOS for how many years now?
7 years now. Yeah.
7 years.
Over
Before EOS
50
as an organization,
businesses and approaching around 400 sessions.
400 sessions, you said 50 businesses.
Yeah.
I know EOS had their own bit of exponential growth shortly after COVID. I think it was 2022. They've 4xed.
Yeah. After they went franchise, kind of that time, I would say there was a little downturn as they went franchise. They lost a few people, but then it's now picked up. And I think it's still scaling exponentially, Ross. I think
Like
it's,
853 implementers or something like that, and 230,000 companies.
but we're expanding internationally too.
Yeah,
You know,
EOS worldwide.
yes. English speaking, Spanish, and then beyond is the goal.
It must be pretty exciting being a part of that organization as well to see what it was like in your prior C-suite positions for these fast-moving companies to be also an implementer in another fast-moving company. You know, is there a sense of familiarity with the growth, and you're like, I'm stoked to be along the ride, or is it different because you have your own practice within it?
Little detached, I would say, as a franchisee
Mm-hmm.
from what goes on in the inner workings of the corporate entity. It is exciting in the sense that, achievers want to be on winning teams,
Right.
whether that's business or sports or and so I was fortunate enough growing up to be on a series of winning football teams. I played football into college and just championship teams all along
Huh.
and team-based sports. And business I look at is a team-based sport.
Couldn't
And
agree
from
more.
my perspective, that win at Tektronix was a championship. That kind of phenomenal growth, not only from the growth, but the unity of the human energy within the business is felt very similar to the alignment of the human energy on a winning sports team. And what does that mean? That means people seek to understand the company vision plan, or let's say the team sport strategy for the season. And
Right.
every individual player is hungry to know their part of the plan, what they need to do, whether it's the quarterback, the lineman, the receiver, or defensive end, or linebacker.
Yep.
Everyone on a championship team is trying to understand the basic blocking and tackling for their role, the strategy of the game, their position in the game, and how they contribute. And that's just what a winning business team is, where everyone takes ownership of a piece of the whole such that they're working in unity, and they only have to work better, more in more unity than the competition, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's the fun part.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question about your experience. You brought up playing collegiate football. I understand you were in Oregon State University,
Yeah.
and what position did you play football, and what was that
I did,
experience
I
like?
did not play football at Oregon State. I
Oh,
was
okay.
I played at a community college that was
Oh,
in
okay.
Portland that it was called Mount Hood Community College. At that time, I was a lineman,
Really?
and I weighed 225, 230. It was called the Pac 8 back then. Oregon
Hmm.
State was in the Pac 8. They wanted another 40, 50 pounds on me back in that day. And now it's probably, I would have needed to weigh 100 pounds more. But
Mm,
yeah, I just didn't weigh enough. So community college was my way. And then to be openly honest, is like that was a great party time.
sure.
Yeah. And so I was not focused on a computer science career at that time. That was my first start trying my chops at being an adult. And frankly speaking, I probably failed miserably, but I had a lot of fun.
You know what I think, Tom, though, about that? It's you can cross things off your bucket list because you can't be at 60 and be like, you know what, would love to go and sign up for the football team and love to go and party all the time. Like there's a right place and a right time for things,
Yeah.
and I think the time and place you did it made sense.
Yes. And
Um,
from there, I mean, to your point, out of that, after I finished the 2 years, I went and got basically a mechanic's job at a Boeing aircraft company
huh.
as a machinist. That was another lesson learned. I realized after 6 months that isn't something I wanted to do the rest of my life.
Okay.
Did not stimulate me enough, and that's where I made the turn to basically going to Oregon State, majoring in computer science, and trying to make a career out of it.
I love the pivot though, where you had the awareness that this was not for you. It's definitely for some people, but by listening to yourself, you made the pivot that then set you up to be, you know, C-suite of a Fortune 500 company. Like
Yeah.
that's an interesting pivot.
Yeah, and so, like you, life lessons is it's about the journey, right? Every step of the journey makes, as you were implying, makes us who we are, right? Every single step along our career is a part of forming who we become. And you can make judgments calls on whether that was the right decision, bad decision. Basically, it does become the fabric of your soul as you grow. So experiences are invaluable. In many times the worst ones.
Uh, well, it seems like the worst one, sometimes the most important lessons are found in the worst mistakes,
Well, absolutely.
I think. And you made mention a couple times of how EOS is a tool to harness and optimize human energy. How do you define, because you've seen what winning looks like. You have a frame of reference what good looks like. Can you describe what that human energy felt like within those organizations? Like what does good feel like?
Yeah. Well, when I start with a prospect, I often ask the question, general question, to the leadership team. And of course, you sometimes get a cliche answer. If you were a sports team, if you were a sports team, would you want to be on the field playing ball? Like playing ball, picking daisies. You know how when kids start
Mm.
sports, like my girls started soccer, they're out there on the soccer field playing, I guess, but they're picking like clovers and stuff. Do you want to have a winning season? Do you want to make it to the playoffs, or do you want to take the championship? And really good teams with sincerity and authenticity, and you can feel it, it's visceral in their energy, want to take the championship.
Right.
And you can see when a team is half the team is saying what they think they need to say, is like take the championship. Because I like to follow that up with there isn't a single championship team that didn't have to work their asses off to get there.
Oh, of course.
So if that's what you want, the second question is, are you willing to put in the work?
I
Because if
love the
it were
analogy.
easy, everyone would be doing it. And it's going to take hard work. And when you get a team of individuals, whether that's climbing Mount Everest or, doing something phenomenal, and they have that drive and that energy, they self-align because they know every one of the individuals and their particular competency are going to be critical to taking the championship.
Do you have any sports organizations or franchises that you look at as like gold standard for excellence? And if so, what are they and why?
Wow. That's a good question. And I don't really follow sports now, but I do a lot of physical fitness training,
I think that counts.
but it's not a team sport. I just know that it takes a lot of consistency and dedication, right? And it's not easy. And usually the days that you're down or the days that like going into work and putting in a good effort, you end up the day feeling really good.
Right.
I'm not answering your question.
No, I think you are though, in a roundabout way. It's, you're focused on doing the work, not watching others do the work. You're focused on winning the championship for your own game that you're playing, not watching somebody else. Similar like picking daisies, right? You don't have time to pick daisies. You're trying to win a championship, is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing from you.
And I think it feels like so many people today want instant gratification,
Sure.
and they don't realize that most successful people have put in a ton of work, and it's not always, generally it's not glamorous at all.
Mm-mm.
The work that I put in to produce products that are on the cover of PC Magazine, that moment of sexy limelight being on PC Magazine, that is just, the visual aspect of just a ton of hard work. So it's almost like to be on a championship team, you have to almost love the work as much as you love taking the championship.
I love that frame of reference. A couple of reasons. I've noticed that when people become high achievers in one area of their life, I have a friend, for example, who was a collegiate basketball player and captain of the team, and I think he graduated high school decades ago, and their team hasn't won the championship since he was there, kind of thing. And he broke his back in college and then had sort of an identity crisis where he was like, what am I going to do? I went to school to play basketball. He goes, well, I want a family someday. I might as well get competent at making money. And then he became the director of operations of a firm that did $100 million a year within a decade after that. It's completely different. So that's just one of many examples. I'm sure you can feel the same way. What do you think is a characteristic trait or a core value that you seek in clients that you like to help that gives you the nod that they have championship potential?
A good sign would be an early sign, even in the, let's say, the prospect stage, when we're meeting with them, when we often do a 90-minute overview of EOS with the leadership team and give them an opportunity to hear what the system's about, the tools and disciplines, to discuss what their challenges and opportunities are, and begin to help them see how EOS as a system, the tools and disciplines, can actually solve some of their barriers to getting to where they want to be. And so, one of the indicators to me is, are they listening with a hunger and a sense of excitement about this system, the tools and disciplines, and are they trying to connect the dots to how this could help the company, how this could help them in their roles, how it could help their team and individuals in their organization get totally aligned. And when you can imagine, like, just take a mediocre sports team that has a new coach come in that has been to the Super Bowl, and they have a strategy and a plan, and just think of if this team really wants to take their Super Bowl, the excitement around what they can learn and apply from that coach that's been there, that can help them get there. And it's like you can just see this wave of optimism and energy begin to emerge, which is this is a whole new opportunity. And they're hungry and they're asking questions, really seeking to understand.
So hunger or the desire. I feel like the will to win is more important than almost anything else, because if there's enough of a purpose or a drive, they can overcome almost any obstacle.
Yeah, and to that point is like, as a lineman on a football team, there isn't much glory. There wasn't much glory, but my desire to be on a winning team, that was the role that I fit. That was the role that I was good at. That was the role that I played. It wasn't glamorous. It took a lot of hard work, but I really wanted to be on a championship team, and I would have done anything, right, to get there. That's what you like to see in a really successful business team, is that desire and hunger and willingness to put in the effort, learn, change, grow, sometimes dig ditches,
Do
and
what
know
needs to be done,
essential.
pay the price that success requires.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in terms of human energy, it seems like you've mentioned quite a bit around the one-to-one correlation between the tools in the EOS and having the championship mindset and having the characteristics of helping people obtain what good looks like. Now, let me ask you, what is one challenge that if you solved would make the most significant impact for yourself or for your clients?
One challenge to solve. And I know this is going to sound a little cliche, but the longer I do this coaching, the more I believe this. Jim Collins in a book called Good to Great, his philosophy was you start with the right people, you put them in the right seats, everything else falls into place. Right people, right seats, everything else falls into place. So imagine it's the football team analogy again, right? You get the right people with the right mindset. They want to take the championship. They're hungry. They're willing to put in the work. They'll do whatever it takes, even if it's not a glamorous role or job. And you get a team, business leadership team of individuals like that are hungry to win, self sacrificing for the greater good of the team, and phenomenal things happen.
Hmm. Very cool. What's my final question for you, Tom, is if you could have a conversation with your 8-year-old self or your 80-year-old self, 90, 100, whatever age you think would be the end of the day when you're like, I'm just going to, maybe not retire, but slow it down a little bit. How are those conversations? How would they go between the beginning of the day and the end of the day, Tom?
I think it linked back, Ross, to the earlier thing that I mentioned when I started off. I had this belief that happiness was a destination, and everything I got laser focused on the next challenge, the next goal, the next title, the next compensation level, the home, the kids, the marriage, every one of those steps. Maybe it wasn't explicit, maybe it was more implicit. I thought when I got there, I would feel fulfilled.
Mhm.
And I don't know, maybe it was in my 50s. Now I'm in my early 60s, realizing that this is not the case. My happiness and fulfillment really emerges out of every moment of every day. And on my deathbed, right, like all of us, I'm not going to be thinking about the titles I had, the compensation I had. I'm going to be
Mhm.
thinking about the experiences I had, the richness of traveling the world, the richness of relationships that I've built, the difference that I've made, impact on people's lives, and the legacy of my living is going to be through others that continue to live and pass on some sense of goodness that maybe I imparted on them living a help first relationship based life. And
I,
would I go back and do things differently based on that philosophy? Hell yes. So
that
many
shows
things,
you've learned, right?
because I've learned.
Yep.
Do I operate differently now? Absolutely. Help first. Do I make mistakes and still get caught up in the, destination? For sure.
Only human.
Only human. But
Uh,
I just keep trying to live every day, happy every day, building relationships like, we've just struck up between us. That's the richness of life.
I couldn't agree more with the simple sentence that life is lived one day at a time. And if you can string together an awful lot of pretty good days, or you've at the end of the day, not even at the end of the life, at the end of the day, you can say, boy, am I kind of exhausted. But the thing that's exhausting me was a worthwhile pursuit or a worthwhile thing. Then you won the day. And if you do that enough times in a row, I would like to have this mindset when I'm older, and I got to remind myself by telling it to you that it's just a series of days. Make as many of them meaningful and impactful as possible, and let God or the universe, whatever you want to believe, take care of the rest.
Absolutely. I've got this, you can see just a little bit of a tattoo right here. I don't know if you remember when Jim Kelly was the coach of the Oregon Ducks football team, but his mantra was seize the day, carpe diem.
Mm-hmm.
Seize the day, make every day count, because also when we begin to get to my age, 20-30% of the people my age now have passed on, and they weren't always by design. So every day's a gift. You just never know. It could be cancer, it could be brain tumor, it could be aneurysm. um, any day could be your last day, and that old saying, any day could be your last day. Someday it will be true, right?
Yeah,
Live your
man,
days like
that
your last.
it's just such a. If you didn't tell me how old you were, I would have said probably between 42 and like 50 something. But and again, not saying that just for the simple fact that the way that you live. And I think what you said earlier about having an integrated life that is focused around, wellness and well-being, like you don't have to worry about your last day. Like you said, 20 to 30% of your peers have passed on for whatever reason. At least you can check off that you did what you could to preserve, right? To
Yeah,
endure, not just endure, but to thrive. And I think for a lot of people, that's just like that's a great goal, right? It's just to figure out what you can do today and then try and do a little bit more the next day and keep doing
yeah,
that.
yeah. And
That's cool.
that is a fascinating part of this coaching, EOS coaching role as well. Is so many people. Well, let me back up a step. Prospect generally is the CEO, visionary, or owner of a company, right? And we can't force EOS on them. They have to recognize that where they're at is not where they want to be. They want to be somewhere better. And they know that if they keep doing what they've been doing, it's going to be the definition of insanity. And so they're looking for ways to do things different. In many cases, that might be, I would like to exit my business in 3 to 5 years. Or I would like my leadership team, my C suite team, to be running the business on their own so that I can chase my other passions with my wife or my family. And EOS, helping them implement EOS within their business enables them to have those kind of choices to exit, maximize the value of the business, and exit with a smooth transition because it's a self run business to the new ownership, or pursue another startup because this business is running on its own, or chase their visionary passions, shiny objects. And that is so friggin' rewarding, because when we think about life's the journey and helping other people, that's what we're helping that leadership team, and basically eventually the whole organization, just run a better business and live better lives. Nothing more rewarding than that, like when we look back on things we've accomplished.
It's the reward of the EOS journey, a gift
It's
that keeps on giving.
They get to live the EOS life that you were describing earlier, the EOS life, doing doing what you love doing with people you love, right? Delivering value, getting compensated fairly, and having the free time to chase your passions. It's
Very
real.
cool. So, Tom, for those that are listening that want to learn more about you or EOS to get in touch, where can people find you? How can they get in touch?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tom. It's probably Thomas Wesner. It's linkedin.com/in/Thomas hyphen Wesner, or EOS microsite, EOS Worldwide microsite, which would be eosworldwide.com/Tom hyphen Wesner, Wesner. Or there's my phone number, 503-939-3884. My email, tom.wesner EOS Worldwide, all one word.com. And I'd be more
Excellent.
than happy to talk to anyone that has an interest in becoming an EOS implementer, interest in implementing EOS within their company with a coach, might want some advice on self-implementation of EOS within their company. How could they improve? Where are they at? How could they improve? Or just wants to talk business or life.
Very cool. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in again. I don't run ads in the show. I don't plan to. The only ask is if you found value, please share it with a friend that may also do the same. Until next time, everyone, be well. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.